Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Guys, I just woke up from a nap, so let's hope this video goes well. If you can tell by the title or the thumbnail, we're doing the book recommendation tag today, and this tag was created by Steph Bohrer. It's been going around for a while, so I'm super excited to finally do it. I've been like putting it off because I was like, I just don't know what books, but I have finally did it, and we are going to talk about all these books that pertain to the questions, I guess you can say. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the questions. First book is, well, the first question is a book you tell people is your favorite. And obviously there's so many books that I think I can like say this for, but I gotta say, no matter who I'm talking to, I gotta go with Darling Venom. Guys, this book, it was in my 5-star reads book, and I could go on and on about this. Parker S. Huntington, she became one of my auto-buy authors by this book alone. Like, I did not read any other her books. This was the one book I read by her, and I was like, I'm buying all of her books. So she has become an auto-buy author based off of one book. And it's just, it's such like, it talks on such a heavy topic, guys. Like, when I finished this book, I was in like the biggest book slump of my life because I could not find a book that like was giving me the same feeling. And like, the writing is just a masterpiece. The style of the writing, there's just so much I can say about this book. But oh gosh, I'll give it a little, I'm not gonna give it a little synopsis of all these books because it's just, that's a lot. But yeah, this book talks on a heavy topic, but it has such an intriguing plot with it. The characters I love, and it just gave me everything I needed. I read it beginning of this year, and throughout this entire year, this is still like, we're in May, this is still like been my top book of the year. Like, I've read some really good books that like are very much up there, but that one, Darling Venom, has definitely still been like my #1 book. This one is a book that is your guilty pleasure, and this is Credence by Penelope Douglas. Guys, this was the first book I read by her, and I honestly didn't know what to expect going in, but you know, it stuck with me. After I read it, I like didn't know how I felt, but once I like slept on it, I couldn't get it out of my head, and it was unbelievable how I felt about it. But yes, I gotta say it's my guilty pleasure. It is reverse, I guess you can say reverse harem, but it's so weird. There's age gap in it, and it's just so complex, and the way Penelope Douglas wrote that story is just phenomenal. The third question is a book everyone loved but you didn't, and I really focused on the word love because I'm not gonna say I did not like this book. I did like it, I just did not love it. I did read it and then right after immediately watched the movie, and honestly I do think I prefer the movie over the book. There was just so much in the beginning, like so much information, or it just seemed like it was a slow start, but eventually I did get into it. But it was, like I said, it was a like, not a love book. Next we have a book you read the fastest, Good Girl Complex. I read this also at the beginning of this year, and this was actually the first book I read by Elle Kennedy. And when I read it, I honestly didn't even look at the author, so I didn't know it was Elle Kennedy. Like, I didn't know it was her, even though I had like multiple of her books. And it wasn't until after I was like, oh crap, this was written by Elle Kennedy. And I freaking loved it. I loved like just the town, anything like where people like escape to a small town, or like just where you have a town where everybody knows everybody. I love it. That's what I want to live in one day. I know some people like don't like it because they're like, oh well, you know, everybody knows everything, but guys, I would love to live in a town where it's like just so small and you know everyone, and it's like, it's just amazing. So yes, I love this one. I love the summer vibes. I kind of do wish I waited for summer because this is a perfect summer read, but luckily the third book in this series, there is 3 books, We have Bad Girl Reputation that's already out, and then the third one, I honestly don't remember the title, but it comes out this summer. So I cannot wait because I will be reading that. The book that deserves more hype, I have to go with The King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett Sinclair. And I just feel like she deserves more hype in general. Like, her writing is just so good. I love the way she tells a story. It flows so easily. And this was one of the first books I read by her, and it gives me like the same feeling when I was like reading Akitar. Not like the plot is not the same, because this one deals with vampires and it's a forced marriage and all of that, and it's just, it was so good. But when I say like it gives me that same feeling, like I was reading it and I like didn't know what was going on around me. Like, I was so enthralled in this book, and it was just amazing. The characters, Queen of Myth and Monsters was also really good, and there is a third book coming out, but I don't think it comes out till next year, which I'm kind of sad about, because I literally read Queen of Myth and Monsters so freaking fast. But I cannot wait to read the third one. But yeah, I definitely think this book deserves more hype. I've seen like it's been getting more out there. I have been seeing more people read about it and talk about it. But yes, I love this book so much, and I definitely think it needs more hype. A book that is becoming a movie or TV show. And guys, there's so many books that fit this like question, because a lot of books are becoming TV shows or movies now. But one of the ones that I'm really looking forward to is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book made me sob. I was so freaking like emotional and seeing it. I think the movie may already be out, but if it is out, it's like just out. Like, it just came out this month. I really hope they did not ruin it for me. I really hope they didn't ruin the book, because like I said, I truly love this story. This story was so sweet, and it was so hard to like be like, okay, what would you do in this situation? Like, it was such a hard question. It was such a hard like just story to just like really picture yourself in. Guys, my like hood is like all crooked. But yeah, it was such like a hard story to just picture yourself in. It's like, what would you do? And it's like, man, I don't really know what I would do. A book you have reread the most, and I honestly haven't done many rereads. Like, I'll have moments where like I'll go to a certain chapter in a book and I'm like, I want to reread that, like reread that chapter. But just the full-on reread, guys, A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. If you guys don't know, I freaking love Monica Murphy. She is one of my auto-buy authors as well, and the way she writes her stories, I know some people don't like it focuses on like kids or like high school, especially this series in particular. And then her other series is the other series I have by her is also like kids in school. But I just love the way she writes it, and this is probably one of my favorite. No, this is definitely my favorite book by her. Like, I love all her books, but this is definitely my favorite. Crew and Ren, I'm freaking obsessed. I could go on about them on and on and on, but this is definitely one of the books that I like recommend to a lot of people. But it's definitely just, I love it, guys. I love it so much, and I'm actually rereading it now. I'm actually listening to the audiobook right now. It's my first time listening to the audiobook. And it's just, it feels like I'm reading it for the first time again. I just love this world. I love it, guys. So yeah, a book from a genre you don't typically read. And my typical genres are romance and fantasy, and I think like I do a lot of like subgenres in that, but one of the genres that I don't typically read is thriller. I think this year alone I probably only read 3 or 4 thrillers, but I love reading them. Like, I really do love reading them, and I do want to start reading more of them. But yeah, out of like all the 3 genres that I read, this is probably the one I definitely do not read the most. Book that deserves all the hype it gets. Gotta go with Icebreaker on this one, guys. I love this book so much, and I wish it actually got more hype, but it gets so much hype, and it is so worth it. I think it's Anastasia. I think that's how you say it. I always want to say Anastasia, but yeah, I love her. I love her. And what's the guy? Nate Hawkins. Guys, favorite. This was my first hockey romance, and it definitely set the bar high for me. And so far, every other hockey romance I have read Like, I love them so much, but it never hits like Icebreaker hits. And I just love that story so much. And like I said, I definitely believe it deserves every single hype or all the hype it gets. Like, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with that story, and it's definitely, gives everything it needs to give. It gives everything it needs to give. A book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. And so I thought about this one, like, you know, there's a lot of books, but I feel like my one general book, especially because this was one of the books that like really got me into reading, and it puts me in my Colleen Hoover era, and it's Ugly Love. And I know there's like so many mixed emotions on this book, but guys, this was probably like one of my favorite books when I started out reading. It's still one of my favorite books. Like, I can definitely sit here and reread this one. I love Miles Tate so much. It's still one of my 5-star reads to this day. And like I said, it was definitely like, it was in my early reading, like before I started like really discovering more authors, which I think Colleen Hoover is a great like author to get people into reading. She was my author that got me into reading. So out of all the books I've read by her, Ugly Love is definitely my favorite. And like I said, I recommend this to everyone. I actually have multiple copies of this, and I have some loaned out right now because I like gave to my friends so they could try to read it, because it's just one of those books. Like, I don't know, it's not too much. It's such a like, you have moments where you laugh out loud, but then you also have moments like you're like, what the heck did I just read? And I just think like it just brings all the emotions that like reading can get out of you, because there's also times where you're crying, and it was a full circle book, and I loved it. A book that's with your favorite characters or characters. Anyways, Twisted Love. And I know there's so many other good characters in this series too, but Alex and Ava have my heart. Like, and I don't know if it's just because obviously this is the first book, and this like made me fall in love with the series, which I'm actually gonna do a reading vlog of Twisted Game soon. I'm gonna do a reread of that one. And guys, I still think Alex and Ava take the cake for me. They are literally like my favorite characters ever. And I love Alex. I know he's the grumpy person, but guys, he just has my heart. Like, I love it. I love it so much. And no one can change my mind. Alex and Ava are literally my favorite characters in that series. Book you wish you could live in, and it would be a crime if I did not put this series in this tag, which this series could also, or this book could go for so many questions. But A Court of Mist and Fury, I had to choose a fantasy book because who wants to live on the real world? Who wants to live in the real world? Gotta choose a fantasy world. But if you guys don't know, I mean, this book is literally everywhere. I thought about like each book, and as you guys know, I've only read the first 3, but I thought about each book, and I was like, if I had to choose which one, like even though they're all part of the same world, at what point would I want to live in that world? And I gotta choose A Court of Mist and Fury. A Court of Wings and Ruin has become probably my favorite so far in the series, but the only reason I would not choose to live in that one is because there's like a lot of war. Like, I won't survive. So that's why I chose A Court of Mist and Fury. And this is just where you see Valaris thrive, and yes, I would definitely choose to live in Valaris. Yeah, I love the courts. I love, you know, I think my favorite court would probably be Autumn Court, but like just based off the aesthetic. But Valaris, I mean, it takes the cake for me. Valaris is definitely the world I will live in, and it's just always going to be probably my favorite world. I think even though I like enjoy so many other fantasy books, I think ACOTAR world is like just top tier, and it's never going to change for me. Especially like it's the first fantasy book I read, and it's the book that got me into fantasy. And anybody who asks me like, oh, when you want to get into fantasy, like what's a good book, automatically ACOTAR. It's just such a good series to like get into. It's not super complex, and it's just everything it needs to be. It's everything it needs to be. And like I said, it's the best world to me. Like when I do read this world, like I always, every time I read a book from this series, I have a book hangover. And I like expect it going in now, because it's like, once I finish it, I'm like, can I like have more of this world? Like, I like physically like get attached, like physically and emotionally and mentally get attached to that world. And then I'm done with the book and I'm just like, you know, nothing's gonna give me that world back. So I go on and on about that series or that world. So we're gonna go to the next question. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. And I don't really have any books that I think I would have hated, but I've definitely read books where I'm like, okay, I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy this, and I had my doubts. But the most recent, or at least the one that stood out to me, was Before We Were Strangers. And this is a second chance romance. And I hadn't read a lot of second chance romance. I think this was my second chance romance, because the only other one I think I read before this one was Every Summer After. And I really liked it, but like, I don't know, it just, like, the trope of second chance romance, it wasn't like one that stuck with me. Like, I wasn't actively seeking out second chance romance. And so this one had been on my TBR for so long, and I finally caved. And guys, I love this book so much. It was definitely one of my favorite books of the month. I think I read it in March. It was either February or March, but yes, I loved it. It was so sweet. It was just the way they connected, like the way they reconnected. Like, I really love that. I love the opportunity that they got. Like, I love the way they, like, even the way like the guy was just like adamant about like making something happen. I really love that. And like when they were kids, and I hate the way like their relationship ended, but then it started back. So yes, I don't know if I'm going on and on, but yeah, I loved it. I think I went into it thinking like, oh, maybe like a 2 or 3 star read, and it came out like a 4.5 for me. So that's that one. A book that made you cry. I've read a lot of books that made me cry, but the one that I think is probably the book that made me cry the hardest, If He Had Been With Me. Guys, if you have not read this book, go read this book. Prepare your hearts, but go read this book. And oh gosh, guys, this is one of those books where when I said I like go back and reread a chapter, this is one of those books. I like reread that like same chapter for like 3 days straight and sobbed every single time I read that chapter. And it's just, guys, I don't even know like how I even like went into this book thinking I wasn't gonna cry. I just like, and it's kind of like it's one of those books where it's not even like a guessing game. Like, there's so many clues. Like, she just flats out say it in the first chapter, like what's gonna happen. Like, you know what's gonna happen, but then you go through the entire book and it's like a smooth sailing like book, and then at the end it just rips your heart apart. Like, utterly rips your heart apart. Guys, I was on like FaceTime when I finished this book with one of my friends, and I took screenshots of me crying. I was like, I look horrible. I will never show those pictures in the light of day, because guys, my entire face was red. I was literally a complete mess, and that, like, the playlist doesn't make it any better for me. I just absolutely lose my mind when I like listen to this playlist. And it's just, if you want to cry, read that book. The second book comes out in October, and you get Finney's point of view, and I am not ready, but I am ready. If that, guys, I just know I'm gonna be a mess, but I'm gonna love the mess that I'll be in. We have a book you wish you could read for the first time, and I actually chose 2 books for this. There's so many books that I wish I could read for the first time, but 2 of the books that I still think about like to this day, like every day. Like, I'm not lying when I say every day, like literally every day. Like, there's some point where I'm like, man, that book was good, like, or something reminds me of the book. Like, there's always something. But the 2 books are Things We Never Got Over and Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Guys, Knox and Naomi and Jordan and Pike, oh my gosh, y'all, I freaking love these books Guys, I just can you like tell, I'm like speechless when I talk about these books. But this one is my 5-star reads. This one would, when I make a new 5-star reads, this will definitely be in there. This is another Penelope Douglas, and then this one is Lucy's Score. I love this entire series, but the first book definitely is probably my favorite. And yeah, I just like the feelings I got. This was my first Grumpy Meet Sunshine, so I think that's why this one really plays like just such a like special place in my heart. Because wait, my camera, like, oh, my battery's about to die. Okay, hopefully we can get through this video. But yes, the way this book just like the story, this was my first Lucy Score book. This is also my first small town romance. There were so many firsts for me in this book, and it just stays with me like forever. And I'm always gonna love it. I think like even like no matter how many Lucy Score books I read, I think that's always going to be my top one. And then this one, y'all, this book just gave me, if you didn't watch my April reading wrap up, go watch it. You will see all my thoughts about this book. But it was just such like, it was such a like unexpected story, and I was like rooting for them. Like I was like, not one moment in this book I was like, y'all should not be doing what y'all doing. Like I was here for it. I was here for it all. And I'm sorry if people don't agree with that, but y'all, that book, I loved it. I loved it so much. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if any of these books fall into those questions for you, or like pick a question and let me know what book you would choose for that question. So pick any question out of this tag and let me know in the comments what you choose, and let's like have a conversation about it, guys. I love responding to the comments. I love seeing what you guys think. So yes, without further ado, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.